Hello, good morning. Thank you for coming. It's always nice to see people turn up at 9 o'clock in the morning to come and listen to you. You'll have to forgive me if I sort of stop to cough and sniffle. I'm getting over a cold. But in any case, my name's Nick Wallace. I'm a senior policy analyst at the Centre for Data Innovation, which is a non-profit, non-partisan public policy think tank headquartered in Washington and in Brussels. And we work on just about any area of public policy that affects the data economy. We're also part of a larger think tank called the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, which the University of Pennsylvania recently ranked as the world's #1 science and technology think tank. Now, the idea for today's event is to discuss how AI and cybersecurity strategies in the EU might complement one another. We already know that the EU values both independently. The point today is how can each one support the other. I should also say at this point, we're not here to read, the panelists can raise it if they wish, but we're not really here to discuss the Cybersecurity Act that's obviously subject to a lot of false trading at the moment. We're thinking a little bit broader than that. It's more kind of how can the EU's cybersecurity agenda and how can the EU's artificial intelligence agenda support each other. But obviously the question is why do we want to have that conversation? I think why you would want to promote cybersecurity in your AI strategy is probably intuitive. If you want to automate important processes using AI, you want that AI to be secure. A lack of security is both a risk and a barrier to AI adoption in some areas. But AI can also play a role in helping you to secure systems. For example, one AI and cybersecurity company in the UK, Darktrace, they use machine learning to detect novel and as yet unknown types of attack that have never been seen before, also known as zero-day attacks, which are hard to identify with traditional cybersecurity tools. And I should say, I'm sure they're not the only cybersecurity company doing that. They're just one that I happen to be aware of. AI can also improve detection of more quotidian cyber attacks, such as phishing, which relies on the more or less incurable problem of human fallibility. AI can help spot signs of phishing and it can alert users to the risks that they might be about to take. So the Centre's position on this is that policymakers in the EU should integrate strategies for promoting AI and cybersecurity because securing AI is important and because AI can help secure important systems. What we don't yet have a position on is exactly how the EU should do that, which is what this panel's for. So as you can see, I have 3 panelists here today to help me with that. So from your left to right, we have Roberta Di Castella, who is Senior Policy Manager at the European Cybersecurity Organization. We have Vivian Lunella, who is a member of Cabinet for Vice President Andrus Ansip at the Commission. She specialises in cybersecurity in the Cabinet. And we have Ilias Kansos, who is the Senior Director of Government Affairs at Symantec. So we're going to not have any speeches or presentations. The idea is to have an open conversation. So I'm going to kick us off in just a minute with icebreaker questions. And I hope not to exhaust all of those questions. We'll talk for about an hour, and then we'll open up for questions from the audience. And I promise everyone that we will finish by 10:30 sharp. We are recording the event on that camera there. If anyone notices the lights on it go out, please do panic, although I've turned the screen facing towards me, so I should notice if that happens. After the event is over, we'll publish that video on our website. Obviously, you can all share that for anyone who wants to see this. But I'm going to dive straight into the questions. So I think the first sort of obvious open-ended question that I'm just going to throw over to the whole panel, and whoever wants to dive in first can, is what are the implications of growth using AI for cybersecurity? What are the opportunities? What are the threats?
So, good morning everyone, and I'd like to begin by actually thanking the organizers, both for inviting me today and also for not asking me to prepare a PowerPoint after 6 speeches over a period of 10 weeks, 10 days. There comes a point of self-inflicted death by PowerPoint in my case. So, on the question of where are we in terms of cybersecurity and where are we in terms of the threats and the opportunities. If I was to look at the question of, let's say, threats when it comes to AI, we should probably begin by accepting that there are threats we don't know about, just because we are starting now to get fully in touch and understanding the implications of the technology. However, let's say, the top list of what I've seen coming up as threats to AI. First of all, you've got the typical problem of attacking the machine itself, compromising the infrastructure, compromising the algorithm, compromising the underlying technology. The typical, if you like, cyber threat, cyber attack, cybersecurity problem that interface with any information system. More or less, we have an idea of how we need to be prepared to fight against that. The rules on how information security is done may, let's say, change. The rules are still there. The architecture may change depending on what it is every time the one is trying to attack. What I find more interesting is, however, the threats that go beyond that particular scenario. So, for example, the threat that is linked with having an AI infrastructure attacking another AI infrastructure. So the ability to use machine learning and artificial intelligence to research, scan, find, and try multiple ways of attacking at a speed that, and learning capability that would be far beyond human. Another aspect that I find particularly interesting when it comes to threats originating from AI is the concept of misinformation. So the idea that every machine learning system needs data sets in order to learn. So if you were trying to attack a machine learning system, one of the easiest and at the same time one of the most difficult ways to fix in case of such an attack is to feed that system with wrong, false, biased data. Because the same way you cannot teach a dog another trick if you've learned the trick the wrong way. The same way, I don't know if any one of you has done, for example, karate, okay? If you do the katas wrongly, unlearning them and relearning them correctly is extremely difficult. A scenario like that, whereby you feed the machine learning, and the product of that machine learning, the artificial intelligence, with bias, with wrong data, with misinformation, is one of those scenarios whereby I can see that technique being used as a defensive mechanism, meaning the machine is able to predict stuff, so how will I cheat it from predicting it with wrong data? But I can also see that, apart from being a self-defense mechanism, also being an offensive mechanism. So we go into a discussion about fake news and all that, and misinformation and propaganda. A third area that I consider very, very interesting is that of, we talked about hacking a machine, attacking the machine using another machine. We talked about giving wrong data to the machine. What about if you alter the reality that the machine perceives as being reality? Case in point, I was in Greece yesterday, and in fact I was in the island of Crete. Those of you that have gone to the island of Crete will see that there are many, let's say, road signs that have suffered vandalism of some kind, usually gunshots, or other spray or other stuff. There's been research that has been done that shows that, for instance, you can take a stop sign apply duct tape, nothing high-tech, duct tape, black and white duct tape, on the road sign, on the stop sign, and if you place it just about on the right spots inside the stop sign, instead of, the human will read it's a stop sign with a bit of duct tape in funny places. The computer, however, the artificial intelligence algorithm that will be running in the connected car will look at the stop sign and will see the blackened and whitened areas caused by the duct tape, and you will read the sign as speed limit 70. So you can imagine a scenario whereby you have a self-driving car on a crossing, on a cross point, on a crossroad. It can identify itself, its position on the map because of the GPS, but at the same time, it will look to its surroundings, and information on the surroundings will override the GPS settings. So the moment it reads, yeah, this is not a stop sign, this is 70 kilometers per hour, speed limit sign, drive on, that's how you can cause the accident. And you have not actually done anything on the algorithm, you have not attacked the system, you just understand how the machine reads that particular image, the stop sign, and you slightly modify it to make sure that, let's say, you achieve the desired result.
Just out of curiosity, why are people shooting street signs? Are these stray shots, or is this a political thing?
No, it's basically shooting practice.
Right, just to see if you can hit the stuff.
Yes, exactly. They have in Crete, I'm mentioning Crete specifically because they have a long-standing tradition since World War II of weapons possession.
Right.
You know, the Germans parachuting and all that, their Operation Mercury. So, and you know, the thought of it came to me like, wow, imagine how would the connected car read signs in Crete of having these problems, having seen the research with the duct tape. So, and then the final point, perhaps, when one is looking at the threat bit, we as human beings, all of us have certain traits that we see them being social engineered the way the cyber attackers operate. So, you know, the email that comes in appears to be the email from someone that you know and suggests that you need to click on that link. That's a typical example of social engineering, taking advantage of a human vulnerability. When we get to a point whereby we will not be able to understand how we interact, whether the person on the other end of the line that we're interacting is a person or a human, how would it be for the machine to try to effectively, at scale, at very large scale, try to take advantage of these human vulnerabilities? These ways of us being used to behaving towards another human in a certain way, being polite. These are some of the threats, and these are some of the questions that we're unsure of, or some of the questions that we're trying right now in the security space to grapple. On the opportunities, you mentioned one security company. Indeed, there are several. We have been having artificial intelligence systems, and we've been relying on them for quite a while. Very simply because, given our size and scale, we need AI in order to just plow through the massive amount of data that we have on threats. So will the AI do things like reduce the time of human analysts, increase the scale of the skills, actually reduce the skill gaps that we have, increase our skills and our ability to detect and stop attacks, help us detect unknown attacks? All that is already happening. All that is already there. So lots of potential when it comes to how we apply it in order to do better, faster, more accurate cybersecurity, but a lot of unknowns as well and question marks. The more we rely on automation, IoT, the more we're going to have the AI running swarms of drones and plowing through terabytes of data. We will need to be answering questions around how do we protect the environment.
It's okay, you don't. All the mics are on.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Really a pleasure to be here this morning, also to obviously to learn from what others are doing. I think from the policymakers' view, what we see is that obviously on cybersecurity it's a huge priority by now. That's the positive side of all the attacks that have made the news over the past years, that people have now the awareness of the risks that are there. The artificial intelligence being widely used for cybersecurity, That's of course in itself a good thing. We're all for it to have innovation and to make sure that we're best prepared. But Elias mentioned also these risks that what we have to be careful, the most careful about, is this over-reliance on any one area of technology when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to anything basically, because it can create this false sense of security. So you think, yes, it's the system which takes care, you say the two AIs attacking each other. You would also think you have when all your systems, cybersecurity is based on artificial intelligence, it sets the bar too high, means it would stop half of your services you're providing just because they are not perfect. We all know that currently the majority of the services run are not perfect. I read a striking comparison which said that if we used airplanes with the same sense of security, I'm very, of course, careful sitting next to cybersecurity companies saying this, but that would mean every 10th airplane would fall down. Because that's the situation we're in. We still have so much work to do, so obviously we want to make sure that we use all aspects that are there, but we need to make sure that this is not with the aim of saying, and now the AI is there for cybersecurity, that's fine, it's taken care of. It's not. Because when you read, we've come out from the Commission side with these two strategies on cybersecurity last year and on artificial intelligence one this year. I think two of the areas which we've identified in both as really key, and it's not extremely exciting, but this is really what we need to do and where we need to push the member states and the academia, the private sector. It's two issues. People with skills, that cybersecurity skills, yes, but at the same time data skills, and to have the experts who are able to be very fluent in both are even more rare than the two separately. So that's something we're very much trying to push and make sure we have. And the other thing is, of course, very much linked to it, is the investments in research, innovation, and especially development. And that's what we're trying to do on both sides, for the artificial intelligence, for the cybersecurity. Obviously, when we look at the world map, when we look at what our allies, what the US is doing, there's so much investment in these areas, natural. When we see what China is doing on AI, huge investments, but we've come to play the strength of Europe in the ethical standards also, which is something we're very keen to address a lot of attention. I think these are what I see is that we have so much to gain from AI, we're all for it, but we have to make sure that we're prepared and we don't oversell it somehow. There's a lot of hype around it, which has to be de-dramatized. We have to make sure that in the end it's just, artificial intelligence. What's the opposite of artificial intelligence? Human stupidity. You have to make sure that you are putting these things in the right picture.
I think the false sense of security and airplanes are both interesting notes to raise. I heard a while ago that, I don't know whether this is true because I know very little about aviation, but I heard that in many aircraft, I think actually Tesla does this with their cars too, you have systems that can take considerable control of any of the important processes in the vehicle, the aircraft, or in Tesla's case the car, but they often prompt the pilot or the driver to very occasionally just do something that the system doesn't actually require the human to do, but it's just a way of making sure the person's still paying attention. I know this is standard practice in aviation, the fear being that if the machine just took complete control, the pilot would just not pay attention, and then if there were an emergency, he wouldn't be prepared to deal with it. But I think Tesla do this with their cars as well to make sure people don't fall asleep at the wheel. Maybe there's something to be learned from that in a policy sense. I think you'd like to get that first.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks a lot for this kind of invitation. So, I think also to connect to what you're just saying, there is one angle that is, when we talk about security and safety, clearly, these address areas like connected cars, but also power plants or for the planes and so on. So there are also aspects to consider like AI, cybersecurity, and also safety, because these are different perspectives to consider. So clearly the implication for AI and cybersecurity are many, and they were already mentioned before, like all different ones. If you look at artificial intelligence that is serving, for instance, cybersecurity, and then we look into all the aspects related to threat intelligence, and also, as Ilya has mentioned, like possibility to detect the attacks using AI. So these are things that are already been done, like in since some years, but also using AI for all aspects related to situational awareness and so on. And then we have also, like, clearly cybersecurity that has been mentioned before as a way to protect, like, AI in terms like algorithm or possible attacks that we can have with machine learning, like feeding not only like false data, but also sometimes data that can be, they are correct, but there are certain bias that might lead the machine like to be trained in such a way that will not detect the data. So it just false information that is provided. So clearly, the two of them, when we look at like together, can be a very powerful tool for empowering both the industry. When we talk about, you mentioned automation at the beginning. So when we look into automating all the processes, if we want to use AI, then we need to have cybersecurity to be there to protect as well all the possible automation that we need to have. But also they can be at use of the society, of the citizen, so we should not forget clearly the citizen. This is very important also. It's something that we clearly address in EXO, in the PPP is one important component, just to address also the social good per se, the society, the citizen, and so on. There is one aspect also that it was touched also before, is that we need data. So clearly, I mean, AI now it's more effective not only because of new algorithms that are coming in, but also because of the amount of data that we can gather. So there is the link with IoT that is bringing like all this new dimension with all the machine-to-machine interaction, the machine-generated data that are fed and then can generate new decision, better decision, and so on. So there is also a question to using cybersecurity to protect the data integrity per se. It's also what we mentioned before about false data and so on. So this is very important because when we are going to take decisions, so we need to rely on that. And clearly the aspect is the last one that people are talking a lot is about GDPR, so clearly privacy aspect that needs to be addressed and considered, because sometimes we need also to rely on personal data that needs to be anonymized, that can be used also by predicting, for instance, the behavior of a person. There are some nice tools, like I think there is videos of booking, like a machine that is booking instead of the human. So it's like predicting also the possible behavior of the human, so we might enter into the area of privacy. So aspects that needs to be as well considered.
I just want to encourage you to develop that thought a little bit further. So what are the cybersecurity implications of being able to predict human behavior?
Well, clearly there are some private information that might be used to predict like the human behavior, like if we look at the single entity. But then we might also generalize and then consider like a group of humans. So then we can have like anonymized data that can be used to train like the algorithm per se. And like the way that the human will respond to certain requests, but also it has mentioned AI and AI, like one attacking the other. So you might have like artificial intelligence predicting what the human will do to respond to an attack, something like that.
Can I just, to make the discussion, let's say, a bit more exciting, can I just ask a question? You seem to insist, I suppose because of, again, I'll deliberately be a little bit provocative, because of data protection orthodoxy, which, by the way, I share, on anonymized personal data. If I'm the bad guy, I don't care about the law. I don't anonymize personal data. I want as personalized, as identifiable as possible, and I want to use them at scale for a number of purposes. And these could be PSYOPs, psychological operations, paramilitary term, deliberately used in this scenario. It could be, because, I don't know, I'm a terrorist group. It could be because I want to use it to achieve effect because I want to create unrest in a particular territory or province of the country. or it may be because I want to conduct mass-scale fraud. So the assumption that we are going to be the good guys are going to be feeding anonymized personal data, or that the bad guys will be finding anonymized personal data to feed their attack strategies, whatever those might be, is something I would challenge. Why? First, if I was the bad guy, I would certainly want very specific personal data. And if I was the defender, at one point, if I need to be able to defend effectively, if the attacker knows what he's hitting and I don't, I need to be able to personalize my defense. Right?
That's correct, but we are considering only the case about attack. But we should really consider the case of providing services.
Sure.
For the, I mean, if there is a company that needs to provide services to the citizen, so not really my need to access all the personal data. So it's not only, for me, the intersect between AI and cybersecurity is not only protecting against the bad guys, like you mentioned, like terrorist attacks, but also to protect the rights of the citizen when we have also companies that might need to provide the services and they don't really need to access personal data. If I look, for instance, on my mobile phone, when I have a lot of applications there are certain data that might not be requested by the application per se to function correctly, but those data might be gathered for other purposes. So the question is, clearly, if we are looking into an attack-only situation when I need to protect my assets, my company, so clearly the attacker is not really acting in a more, let's say, respectful way for who is attacking. But if I need to look also in the dimension of providing services and addressing what I mentioned before, like the social good and the society, then in that case, I need also to consider these kind of aspects and integrate those data in an anonymized way, or if I want to use them.
The only thing I would say to that is that, first of all, security is also service.
Sure.
So in that sense, I mean, everything that would apply for a service, a general service, would apply also for cybersecurity service. The difference perhaps would be the level of invasiveness, meaning how much personal data would the security service need versus another service. In fact, my starting position would be that, looking at it strictly from a cybersecurity perspective, the provider of the cybersecurity service will begin with very strict data minimization requirements. I don't want to know too much about Vivian. I want to know roughly something about her for me to be able to protect her. But the less I know, the more effective I can protect, more effectively I can protect her in terms of my GDPR compliance requirements. Okay. At the same time, to your point about using AI, so what I think you're basically saying is, how can I use AI as a privacy enhancing technology? Okay. How can I use AI to determine that I don't need to disclose more information than a particular amount of data that I've already disclosed?
No, I'm saying that we can still use AI, but again, what you mentioned is that AI is using data, so it's not AI as a way to protect the privacy, but it's protecting the privacy while using AI.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the issue.
That's what I said, yeah.
Where we are in Europe, and we speak, yes, we need to use more AI, we need to make sure that we use the benefits of it. What do you need for AI? You need data. As you said, the bad guys, they have it all. They don't have to obey the rules.
Yeah.
Whereas us here, we have the GDPR, which is great because it enhances the consumer trust, makes sure people feel more at ease with the control and that they have the control of their data. We have now, you know that we've been having these discussions now for a year about the free flow of data. The same thing, how can we be the 21st century? And we've had to push so hard to be able to get there that now next week, not next year, the Parliament will hopefully vote and give their final agreement on the deal. But these are the challenges we're looking at from the regulatory point of view. We all agree, yes, AI is very important to you, let's go for it. But then let's make sure we have the free flow data in place, that we have the GDPR fully in place, and so on, which would allow us to get the data.
If I look at it from the good guy side, okay? That's how we would identify ourselves.
Us too,
So-
then. The good guys.
Absolutely. But that's by default, whereas unfortunately we need to ask money
If
at some
there's any
point.
bad guys in the room, please do identify.
Please identify yourselves.
Second
Um,
row.
There are two critical components that any system that wants to be AI friendly needs to permit. The one component is the actual collection of data, and the other component is the ability to process that data for different purposes or within different boxes, if you like, of how a particular purpose needs to look like. I use deliberately the term different boxes. Why? Because part of the problem with an AI data set is that we don't really know necessarily what we're always searching for or the kind of answer that we're going to get. Meaning, I may be searching for data about the demographics of a particular cybersecurity threat in a country. Let's Greece, the country I know best. And the conclusion from the analysis may be that, but in addition, it may also generate interesting data in terms of the use of broadband in particular location over particular times of the day. I'm giving a generic example. I mean, you can have even more extreme examples like I don't know, how frequently and how fast flu proliferates on a particular territory. The reality, therefore, is that we need a system which gives us legal certainty for the collection of data for particular purposes, and then gives us adequate flexibility in order for us to be able to use that data for, obviously, the purpose that we have disclosed, and potentially for compatible purposes. My view would be that as a point of principle, GDPR does make that possible. So I don't view GDPR as an obstacle in itself. We can discuss about whether it can be more permissive, more flexible, less burdensome, whatever. In the end, it doesn't make any difference. That's the law. It's adopted. It's not going to be. We're not going to have that discussion now.
Not today.
No. And it's not something that we as Symantec would even start. That's it. It's done. It's dusted. That's the law. I mean, we need to find a way to operate on that environment. That's it.
So it's interesting that earlier we had you raised a point about gun ownership in Crete, because I'm certainly reminded of an argument from the American gun debate: is how do you stop a bad guy with personal data, a good guy with at least some personal data with some level of governance, which I suppose is the intelligent answer. And you mentioned GDPR, but there is, I don't pretend to be completely au fait with the latest details on it. There has been some debate over use of communications data for cybersecurity purposes in the privacy debate. Am I right to think that's now been settled?
So I think there's ongoing discussion right now on the topic. I think a number of proposals that have been put on the table are moving in the right direction. So we need to see where exactly, what the lay of the land is going to be. It is indeed the case that some have expressed concern about it. But I mean, in my eyes, the objective of the proposal around privacy has not been to create problems to the cybersecurity community. Quite the contrary. So I would view this more as, how do we find a way that we can accommodate the different interests to make sure that the fundamental human rights and the sensitive personal data, which are in privacy, are effectively protected. And at the same time, that we are really dedicated in making sure that the day-to-day protection of the data happens, we're able to do what we need to do. In my eyes, there's no dispute on why this needs to happen. It's more the technicalities of how exactly we do it right.
But it brings us back to AI as an example, because I remember how it was explained to me that one of the issues at the beginning was that there are cybersecurity companies that use AI to analyze web traffic data in order to identify denial of service attacks.
Correct.
And my understanding was that there was eventually some kind of carve-out to allow that use which otherwise would have been a breach of the privacy as it was being drafted. But it just brings us to another example of where AI and cybersecurity start to cross over, because I believe those were AI systems that they were using to do that, right?
So DDoS, I mean, you're touching an area which is more focused for other providers. Okay. But I mean, what applies on DDoS could apply for targeted malware, for instance. In the end, the critical point is you need a mechanism that allows you legally to collect electronic communications data for cybersecurity purposes, and for that purpose only, not something else. Okay? And you need to be able to process that data as a data controller in some circumstances, as well as data processor on behalf of someone else in some other circumstances. As long as we're able to find wording that can describe that inside the legislation, the problem is solved.
So I want to shift a little bit. I think, and actually I'm going to go straight back to Ilias, but everyone's welcome to come in on this. Where do you, which uses of AI do you think are going to be in greatest need of security? And in terms of, if you think about where you expect to see AI deployed, which of those uses do you think are both the most? I didn't actually read your full job title at the beginning. You're also global advisor on critical infrastructure. So where do you see the use of AI in critical infrastructure, and what cybersecurity problems do you see there, and how might they be addressed?
You're asking an impossible question.
Sorry.
Because that's all right.
I tried to do that.
It's okay. Because you're really asking me to look at a crystal ball and tell you it's going to be blah, like that, and I will be wrong, and it's on tape. So, so I would actually rather therefore play it differently. Last week, Tuesday to Friday, I was in Singapore. The reason why I was in Singapore was because actually I am responsible for Asia too, which is great fun. But also because I had to speak in 3 different events in the context of the Singapore International Cybersecurity Week, the so-called GovWare conference that the Singapore government is actually running. Actually my presentation was critical infrastructure protection and IoT in the time of artificial intelligence. So there, you get to see a very real, very deployable effort from the side of the Singapore government to actually push artificial intelligence, smart nation initiative, that's how they call it, across the different systems in their infrastructure. I cannot tell you just like that which system will be more critical and which system therefore will need, let's say, more or less security. But what I can tell you is that historically, we've been identifying 2 particular systems as, if you like, uber critical, if I can use that expression. Why? Without electricity, nothing works, okay? And without telecommunications, you need the Pony Express to get a message. So, if you don't have electricity, you can't do banking transactions. If you don't have telecommunications, even if you can do banking transactions, they're not going to go very far. So, whereas finance, distribution of water and all that are very, very important, the underlying infrastructure of the information society is basically networks and energy. Actually, first energy and then networks. So, on that understanding, and until we get to completely autonomous systems, both in energy as well as in communications, our ability, the more we rely the operation and the operation in terms of the physical operation of the infrastructure, as well as the digital, the data underlying infrastructure to AI in those 2 areas, the more we will need to make sure that it is absolutely robust. That will be quite difficult for one additional reason. Each of these infrastructures, telcos, as well as energy, is touching on the users. Think about it, all of you have a phone and an energy meter in your house, okay? So it's not something that is really closed and you can therefore easily protect. As a matter of fact, every user, every individual, every device is somehow connected in a way to it. The perimeter is what I would say very elastic. It's not a traditional way of security. You build a bloody big castle, you know, and you put crocodiles on the moat and the bailey and guards. That would be actually very nice, very easy. It's not.
So we can say for the tape that it's energy and networks, and we shouldn't be worried about anything else. I'm kidding.
Oh. No, I'm looking at the camera.
And then when you look at these two key areas, and of course, that's the thing, yes, we need to make sure that they're protecting the highest, but it's not only AI which is the solution. You need to make sure that you have the human component to get in there, and have oversight, have exactly when the systems are tampered with and it's too easy, so on. So I think that, again, we come back to where we started with, that we can't somehow make a dream out of the AI and say this will now save us from any attacks on electricity or telecommunications. To the contrary, we know that you have to keep a close eye on it. When you read the reports of beginning of this year, there was a report by the US about the attacks or the presence, let's say, not yet attacks, but the presence of foreign actors in their energy grid, in their telecommunication system. And then you think, yes, it's something where you absolutely need to have a human intelligence presence at all times.
To echo, actually, sorry, very quickly, to echo the point that Vivian just mentioned, you talked about the aviation example, okay? The fly-by-wire was invented back in '86. So the idea that the computer can take over the plane, control the plane, and actually correct the movement of the user of the plane, of the pilot. The fly-by-wire was invented, why? Because the planes, the fighter planes in fact, were specifically designed to be unstable. Just to be able to turn more aggressively, to be more effective, better dogfighters. So the reason why you designed the fly-by-wire was because you knew the plane was not flying properly, and you wanted the computer to correct the user. And at some point, you wanted deliberately the plane not to fly properly because it meant it could turn tighter and avoid the missile or get into firing position. You have to think of the human intervention on the AI, I would argue, along those lines. So, not that we're going to give up the control to the machine, but rather, how can we use the machine to make the pilot even better?
Absolutely, because we have been now for years and years in a situation where it's completely possible to have a plane flown only automatically.
Yes.
Yet we've never anyone been in there because people wouldn't accept it. So that's really, yeah, that's a good thing to start together for the debate.
Would I be right to understand that maybe as far as the Commission's thinking around the crossover between AI and cybersecurity, I mean, I completely hear what you're saying when you say that you don't want to kind of completely rely on cybersecurity, and I don't. So you don't want to completely rely on AI, and I don't think anybody would suggest that that was what we should be doing. Where is exactly the Commission's thinking in terms of, well, the crossover between its thinking on AI and cybersecurity? I mean, I appreciate you're coming from the cybersecurity side, so maybe I should say, where does AI fit in the conversations that you're having? And also, obviously, I know that the Vice President is very enthusiastic about AI. He talks about this a lot. So just in terms of, insofar as you can share the conversations that you're having internally, where do these conversations overlap with the Commission?
No, they very much do, from the point of view that it's clear that you need to make the most when we look at the cybersecurity scene now. We're constantly under attack. We don't have the right, we have the right means, we don't have enough of the right means. We need to make sure that we use everything. So there AI comes in as a natural component of all that. The other aspect is all the work that we're doing on pushing towards the security by design. It's the same thing. Make sure you have the best components included in the products, in the services, and the systems from the start, including AI, but not only AI. So, and when you look at the challenges that have been identified in both the cybersecurity strategy or the AI strategy, then it's the same. We need more development, we need more research, we need more innovation, we need more skills. So from that point of view, it's from the broader picture, we're seeing the same gaps to be filled, and going then straight into where we see the cybersecurity challenges, we think yes, I think the security by design is the key place where you see the most interaction between it.
Roberto,
Not really. I think that Vivian already mentioned the importance of the two, let's say, the two technologies. Clearly, I think that they are very transversal in the sense that if you look at cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, they are going to have an impact on many different sectors, but also in the life of the citizen. And this is something that is important also to notice because they are going to be very, let's say, horizontal technologies and impact everything. So it's important to really fill the gaps both in developing, let's say, capacities, but also capabilities. So it's very, very important in that. And one aspect that is very key also in cybersecurity is like the skill shortage that you already mentioned, and that we lack maybe people that are really trained to train also others in cybersecurity. And this is also important for the industrial sectors, because you mentioned also before that we have critical infrastructure too that we need to protect with respect to cybersecurity. Elias mentioned like energy and telecom, which I fully agree. Yes, there was a roundtable about 5G and what should be done for 5G. So clearly, if we don't protect, let's say, the infrastructure per se, not only using AI, but really protecting the infrastructure per se by using cybersecurity, we might not be able to provide services to other markets, but also to the citizens themselves. So they are very critical also in that perspective, I would say.
So you mentioned skills. This is the second time we mentioned skills. So let's explore that a bit. Obviously, we hear a lot about skills gaps in Brussels, especially when it comes to the digital economy. We all sort of teach your kids to code, and we've all heard this. But in terms of the present discussion, that is AI and cybersecurity, where exactly are the skill shortages? What skills are we missing here, and what problems does that lead to?
Well, we try to do also in. They asked me some time ago to look at the different value chain and also to understand job profiles where things are lacking, for instance, based on the needs of the companies and then based on the needs of the market. So the thing is that the situation is evolving because we have many technologies that are coming in, like it was mentioned also before, Internet of Things. So the idea is that to have people that are fully prepared, both in addressing, like if you look in cybersecurity, like cybersecurity attacks, but also in terms of new technologies that are coming in, that are changing the way that attacks are made and the way that we need also to protect, but also how the technology impacts all the different industrial sectors. So we are looking at aspects also related to, for instance, cyber ranges, that is going to be, is evolving, it's evolving. And this is it's situation that will continue. I would say that there is no one specific area. That's my opinion. That but we need to consistently train the personnel, but also the people. Even myself, I need to be trained also when there is new technology coming in and to address it properly in a proper way. Then we might have some situation specific that we need like specialization in certain area. That it depends also on the industrial sector, on the application specific, and so on. Yeah.
And no, it's really everything. When you look at it, where the skills gap is.
We're all useless.
Excuse me?
We're all useless.
Not us here, but other people. That's a joke. But when you look at it, where we are in a situation where we've now, at the European Union, it's been recognized, yes, digital skill is a basic skill. It's the same as reading and writing. Schools need to provide children with digital skills. But currently, we all think that, oh, these children, they know how to use their phones, they have super high digital skills. That doesn't really mean much from the point of view that, yes, you can use a game app, but you need to do more. You need to be able to see a little bit behind it, think about. and to integrate cyber skills in there. That's at a very low level. When you go higher, the same thing. We have various universities which give cybersecurity courses, but to have a good integration between when you study data science, that you also include cybersecurity in there, I think there's a lot more to be done. What we've proposed now in the multi-annual financial framework from the Commission, proposed a digital chapter specifically, which would address, again, subsidiarity, of course, you have the universities who have to take care of those. What the EU can do is just push those there and say, these are the issues, think about it, do that, and these are, here you would have some financing, some incentives to go further.
Just push it a little bit. What exactly do you mean when you say digital skills? Like, I mean, I went to school in the 90s and they taught us to type. I can type really well, but I'm not sure that qualifies as digital skills because my grandmother could type really well as well. What are we talking about here? Is it in terms of how people understand the workings of a computer, or is it in terms of understanding threats on the internet, understanding the email? I got an email the other day claiming to be from Aisha Gaddafi, saying she wants to give me some of her late father's money. I suspect that wasn't really from Aisha Gaddafi. Or, I don't know, I should apply and find out. Is it about understanding those kinds of threats? I mean, what exactly are we talking about?
I think, again, let's look a little bit broader than our bubble. Yes, we all use calendar and we send emails. I was chosen by the census office a few years ago to do, when you have, you have PISA tests for children, run by the OECD for the basic skills of maths and reading and social skills, so on. The OECD also does a test for adults on their digital skills, and which are exactly this. How do you use a calendar on a computer? How do you send emails? How do you save? How do you do this? It seems so basic. And yet, when you look at the results, it's stunning where we are. And we're, in fact, even younger groups of people who've come recently from school, generalizing for all the countries, but in a lot of countries, don't have these skills. So there's really a need to go deeper into this and to make sure that we are changing this. We do have lots of positive examples from all over the European Union. But I think more work on that is to be done. But that's more general. It's really the digital skills. But what I see is that you have a lot of, even when you go then to universities, they learn data sciences, but you don't have the cybersecurity element in there as well, which is a grave error.
I don't disagree with anything that has been said. But we do have a big skill shortage on the cybersecurity space, whether that is on secure coding, incident response, whether that is expertise on forensics, threat intelligence, you name it. These skills are rare, these skills are highly sought, these skills are highly paid. So for those of you that are interested on a career in the cybersecurity industry on security operations, it's a good choice. And you're going to have a job for a long time and a highly paid one. That's the starting position. So, no disagreement with everything that was said. Here comes the but. The but has to do with the fact that because our computing paradigm is changing, the way we are interacting with the machine. Think about it. Keyboard, mouse, touch screen, voice command, soon Internet of Everything, and the watch, the cloth is the computer, the car is the computer, the network is the computer, everything is the computer. I got my kids, going into a house which is connected to Alexa, and instead of giving commands to Alexa, trying to figure out which swear words in 4 languages does Alexa know and recognize. So because of the way, let's say, we interact with computers, we also need to be thinking not just in terms of how many security or IT engineers we're going to have. That we have, or at least we in Symantec do. We have a lot of smart people that know how to code. Perhaps they don't know how to talk, but they know how to code. Really. Trust me when I say that. But at the same time, in order to make the computing experience more fluent, we need to be working with people like psychologists, with people like anthropologists, with people on the human sciences, in order for them to be able to make computing more intuitive. The example of how do you know how a cyber threat looks like. In the physical world, we do know, there are places in Brussels that we wouldn't like to go on in the dark, okay? How do we trigger on a computer a fight or flight response? How do we make someone intuitively feel, without expecting that everybody is going to be a security expert, that this doesn't look like a very safe place? That this is something that your physical and senses and proneness needs to be alerted in order for you to be able to address the threat. The possible threat. It doesn't mean that there is for sure, but at least how do I create a sense of heightened alertness and vigilance to the user? Because in the end, the goal should be that rather than the user being part of the problem, how do we make the user part of the solution? How can we rely on the user as what's first line of defense, as opposed to have to basically try to figure out every conceivable way to lock the user out of the security problem, because the user will often be the first vulnerability. So, whereas everything that was said about the immediate problem of skills is correct and true, and I agree with everything that Vivian said, at the same time, we are trying to figure out as well, how do we address the interaction problem and make it more natural, as opposed to it being a pop-up that says that the world is coming to the end, repent sinners and click OK here for me to clean your machine, which is not how it should be.
Absolutely, because when you look at it on cyber hygiene, we speak about it so much. Say, please update your phones, please update your devices, change your passwords, keep your passwords complicated. Do not click, don't do John Podesta. Don't click on any email you get, and we all have to live with the consequences. But at the same time, when you look at last year, when you look at the WannaCry and non-petty attacks, what did we have? We had hospitals, which were, that's really about changing the mindset. And they hadn't changed their mindset. You have hospitals which are using devices which are from ages ago, which have had no updates whatsoever, which have all the back doors, front doors, everything open, and then you think, these are the hospitals, they're responsible for people.
I think very interesting as well is that in the case of WannaCry, I actually don't know how far the problem on continental was. Like in the UK, it was really bad. And that's assigned obviously a lot of any outdated health systems in the British Health Service, but the hackers behind WannaCry probably weren't even targeting health services. It just ended up that, like, it was so by accident the health service gets shut down by, without somebody even trying to shut it down. Reveal something, but at the risk of sounding like a man with a hammer looking for a nail, is this somewhere where AI can help us in terms of maybe giving people, giving ordinary users or giving enterprise users, I suppose would be the technical term, in examples like the NHS, just little bits of extra information saying you might not want to click on that. And I hear what you're saying about a false sense of security. I can see why that might be a problem. Oh, I can click on it because the AI didn't tell me not to, isn't where we want to go. But could AI systems like that be of value here?
Absolutely. I mean, when you think of it, then that's it. It's the security by design. We need to make sure that in anything, or make sure we are striving towards it, that in anything you have the detection and the reaction capabilities going up. That's what we need. And the AI is a perfect tool for it, but it's not the only tool.
This could be also a learning tool in the sense that creating awareness. If I look at my parents, they don't know anything about computers. Sometimes when they use it, they see like the pop-up windows just to say that you need to do, for instance, updates, or for instance, based on the usage that they are doing of the computer or some applications. So there is some suspicious activity. So clearly, I think that Symantec as a company or the software company, they rely also on kind of training for also to advertise for the users and then to push notification. So it could be also, in my view, a way of learning tool and teaching tool also to raise awareness on a different kind of, it's more like personalized teaching, I would say, in that case, by training also the people in the right way and the right skills. And this could be one example, not only related with with cybersecurity, but this could be also related for different areas. And still, like the human brain is very complex to process and then also to model per se, but AI can help in certain way.
So I have another question for you actually. You work on the organization's strategic innovation and research agenda, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, maybe just take a minute to explain what that is, and if you could tell me where AI fits in that agenda at all.
Okay. Yeah, the European Cybersecurity Organization is the counterpart with respect to the Commission for the PPP on cybersecurity. So one aspect that we do is to provide the inputs related to the priorities and challenges for the future that are fed in our strategic research innovation agenda that is pushed for as an input for the work program for the Horizon 2020 goals. So this is one objective, and then also on top of that, we do also other things like pushing industrial policy aspects related to certification, for instance, with respect to the Cybersecurity Act, even if it's good that we don't touch it, and also aspects related to different verticals, training, awareness, we mentioned before cyber ranges, and also SMEs and region aspects, so that's very important. So clearly, we already have aspects that were identified in our initial version of the Strategic Research Innovation Agenda that is publicly available. So on different areas. Clearly, I mean, many of them have been like mentioned before, like if you look into autonomous system in all the different verticals for decision making, it's using AI as a tool like for threat, also intelligence per se. But on the other hand, also identify AI as a technology that needs to be protected. We are moving, we are advancing from that vision in the sense that clearly there was the communication published in April about AI, and also with the increased usage of IoT, Internet of Things. So we are also moving forward. Nowadays we are thinking for a vision 2021, 2027 with what is important to address. And clearly AI comes into those disruptive technologies that will have an impact in the short term, but also in the long term. Other technologies could be like blockchain, for instance, just to name it. Another one that everybody is working on, but maybe few people know how to use it. So with respect to that, we are working on also with another association, another PPP, that is Big Data Value Association. So since providing gathering from them also the needs and the requirements, understanding what are the current cybersecurity solutions that are available, so what is the current ecosystem, and then pushing forward like the strategy to protect like artificial intelligence and cybersecurity at the same time. There are also aspects that we discuss with, for instance, with robotics or with for automation processes. And right now we are working on some technical papers that we will publish, we hope by the end of the year. Needs to reach consensus because the organization is now 200, the association has 240 members, so it's quite, in terms of organization, so it's quite large. And to provide, to identify clearly what is the unique value, added value of the technology, the challenges, cybersecurity challenges, and providing a vision also for the future. So both in short term, but also in the long term. So
yeah. There's one last thing that I want to discuss before I open up Q&A, and I'd like to put this into a geopolitical context. Vivian, in your opening remarks, you mentioned China and the Chinese spending in AI research and the possibility of China taking the lead. This is obviously a big conversation in the US as well, with people concerned about that. And I would also add, I think, well, in the US too actually, but in the European case also, there's the additional cybersecurity concern of Russia. Actually, just before we started the event today, I was having a conversation with someone in the audience about the attacks in Estonia, the Estonian cell network, which presumably came from Russia. How does all this fit together? And we're not expecting to see Russian supremacy in AI, but would the rise of kind of Chinese dominance in AI complicate cybersecurity concerns here, or and how does AI fit in with the Russian question as well? I assume this is in the Commission's thinking somewhere, right?
Absolutely. No, I think the geopolitics of it's very important, of course. And that brings us to our strength, which we have in Europe, which is the reliance on the ethical standards and on the fundamental rights. And I mean it really when you look at it on the GDPR. When we came out with a proposal now, 6 years ago, there was so much criticism and, oh, it's killing innovation and it's doing this and that. In the end, it has been adopted, and it seems that it's giving Europe a competitive advantage even, that we have the strength for the consumers, that they can rely on their data being properly taken care of, and that they are the owners of their data, they have the control. And it gives them the benefit of having more trust in the digital service. I think the same thing for the artificial intelligence, where we're really pushing very hard on the ethical standards. In fact, we've done that, Vice President has done that quite a lot in the G7 framework, making sure that the leading economies of the world would come together and agree on the ethical standards. There we've seen some reluctance on the from one of those countries, on the reluctance on the basis of, but that would kill innovation. At the same time, when I look at all the big companies, look at IBM, Microsoft, Google, whatever, and they all have their own ethical standards on AI.
Right.
So we see this from...
What's the connection between ethical standards and the EU's cybersecurity capabilities vis-a-vis Russia and China?
I know, what you were referring to was the use of AI in China. China is growing, of course, they have more than 1 billion tools, they can recognize the social credit system and so on. Yes, they have, let's say, a sandbox of sorts in a way of exercising all the research and the use of the AI, which we don't have, but like very much online, which we don't want to have, because our citizens are not ready, of course, to have this kind of use of AI. When it comes to the cybersecurity threats from Russia, to be very frank, and the disinformation attacks, there it's really the difference of approach again. Us in Europe, we see that we are concerned about cybersecurity, we use data. In Russia, and you said it in the Commission communication on the disinformation from April, in their military doctrine, it's very clearly said that use of information is one of the military tools. And I think in order, once the Europeans understand that, that makes also the reactions to it different. That it's just we're facing another side which is using information. It's broader than just cybersecurity. Obviously cybersecurity is a key component of it. And there all the work we're doing is hopefully increasing the resilience. Because that's the thing, of course, you can be, when you look at it, you can be as cyber secure as you want. I think there are very few places in the world that can consider cybersecurity their bigger priority than the NSA. Yet you've had material stolen from them.
Yes.
So I think if there's a targeted campaign by the country, which has all the forces behind it, it's difficult to, let's say, the risks are quite huge there. What you have to do at the same time is keep your resilience up, keep the intelligence sharing up, and so on. And all this we're working on. Not all of it, of course, is EU's competence. When you go to intelligence, when you go to that, this is another matter. I think from the way I see it is that already the issue that we talk about it, and that it's something which is on the mind of people, that's a positive sign. The awareness is there. When we had a year ago the first digital summit, so the heads of states came together for the first time to discuss digital issues, each and every one of them raised cybersecurity. And you can be quite sure that it's not because of the, because of their phone that's not working, but it's because of the political implications behind it.
Just before I open up, Ilias, from an industry point of view, I mean, do you sort of think about state and non-state actors differently, or is it more, I mean, or from kind of a threat perception point of view, do they kind of blend into one? on.
So that's such a complicated topic because you can have a state actor. You can have a state actor which is actually funding a third party to do the job for it. And you can have criminal, when that third party would be a criminal group that would normally also operate, for example, in the traditional cybercrime sense of the word. Usually, the characteristic of state versus non-state actors has to do with features of the way the attack is happening, so highly complex, very well researched, very targeted. The nature of the data that's being sought after versus, let's say, the effort of making money. In the end, when you rely only on technical indicators, it will become increasingly difficult after a while to be able always to draw safe conclusions. This is why the discussion of attribution very often goes beyond that of what a technology provider can provide, that goes squarely into the field of intelligence community.
Right.
We would be able to tell you that the cyber attack looks like this. We would have technical indicators that suggest skill, persistent, campaigning, targeting, other aspects, historical data. But in the end, who is behind this, whether this is a false flag or a real operation, and what is the end goal and motivation, both in terms of politics as well as of real-life effects, that would be something that the intelligence agencies need to be able to do, and that's what they've been doing all their lives, as far as I'm concerned. Which is why, in the end, we as a company have an approach that is very, I think, measured in terms of how we describe and how we approach every individual investigation of this sort. I think it's very important that you look at this on a case-by-case basis, because in the end, it is a very complicated science.
Okay, so we've got about 20 minutes left, so I reckon that's a good time to invite questions from the audience, and then we can have sort of conversive answers to them. I'd say that a question is a short sentence that ends in a slight rising cadence from your voice. Yes, you raised your hand?
Yes.
Oh, and also if you could just tell us, I'm sorry, I don't think we have roaming microphones, so if you could shout.
That's all right. Hello, thank you very much for an interesting panel. So we talked about integrating cybersecurity and AI strategies. You mentioned the importance of more investment in R&D and relevant skills. The French have issued a strategy on AI recently, and Finland and France are cooperating, or going to cooperate on AI. And the Germans are also going to publish their AI strategy, I think, in November. How do you look at the initiatives that have been taken already, and what are your expectations for the German one, for instance?
What do we think of the national AI strategies, and what are our expectations for the German one?
Is this a question?
That's the whole panel? Or?
Oh yeah, for the industry and perhaps policymakers from the European Commission, how are you looking at it?
Well, I think from our side, we're very happy to see that the member states are already paying a lot of attention to it, because that's the thing. It's again the same thing. We can come up with the most wonderful strategies, but it's the member states who have to make sure that this happens. So we're very much encouraging the member states. We're happy to do that, and obviously we are in close contact with all of them, because you have from, yes, the French, the Germans, the things that come out with their strategies, you have, or the Germans coming, but you have a lot of other member states which are also working in this field. So for us, we see it as a positive thing. We try to take the best ideas from where we can and then merge it into the European approach.
Not a very different answer, to be honest. When I look at it from our perspective, I think that the attention and the financial muscle and effort that the member states put behind this is a positive. Considering that we have sizable research infrastructure in Europe, in locations like France, like Germany, and other places, the fact that the government there puts emphasis and tries to attract and create more skill, more competence, more knowledge which ultimately will take the form of research and technological development, is a positive. And given our model of innovation, which is based on working with partners on the ground in country, we believe that this is frankly the right approach, the right strategy. In the end, innovation will come from people working together and from that collaborative work expanding to adjacent markets. So yeah, that's the right approach, and it's something that we will be following closely, and we'll see how we can best work together with our research partners on the ground.
Also, just to add, in terms of association, because cybersecurity, most of the time is a national prerogative, so there are already some national strategies in different member states, and this is very important. There is also, I think, an ESA that has a tool just to provide an assessment of the different national strategies. So to mention, for us it's important that all the different member states, associated countries, so they have those strategies because we need to be aligned at the European level, what we propose in terms of cybersecurity strategy. It doesn't need to be only aligned with the national ones, but also we need to consider local aspects. So that's why we focus in the association aspects coming from the regions, because they have the needs directly on the territory, local needs, for instance, SMEs that are around. Then we move at the national strategy where there is more like also national interests in terms of the industrial sectors, what is needs to be there, also for the country itself. And then clearly this needs to be also aligned with what we do at European level. So it's important to take them in consideration and to work together, because also was mentioned before, most of the time it needs to be also implemented locally, because it's much closer to the citizen themselves and also to the market in most cases.
Just to say, for the cybersecurity strategies, it's an obligation under the NIS directive to have a cybersecurity strategy in place, and we see that all member states, but one I think.
Which is the...
You'll read it in this official paper. I'm not going to go into it.
Okay. Anybody else like to ask a question? Yes, back.
Hi. Thank you very much for today.
Could you please, maybe if you stand up as well, it might help your voice carry. It's just because, I'm sorry we don't have a microphone.
You want, so
If
like
you could
this?
stand and shout, that would be...
Okay. My name is Delia Manu. I'm representing an American company, General Computer Resources, since a couple of years, and the Internet Security Alliance that's in the States, which is a very well-known organization fighting for cybersecurity. And what I want to ask you, because it's very interesting what you put it all together today, what I discussed already with you earlier in the morning, artificial intelligence and cybersecurity. In order to not have an artificial intelligence versus cybersecurity, don't you think, or maybe agree, in my humble opinion, what we think in the States, and we just tried to implement it, a couple of years ago, 2009 exactly, in Europe, that actually you need awareness and education and using the tools as tools. Because I educated my three kids and taught them, a couple of years ago, a phone is a phone, a computer is a computer. You cannot give the power to an artificial intelligence, whatever you name it, to take over the humans, because you give the power to the machine will take power on you. I'm not going, things like science fiction movies like, 2001 Odyssey or whatever, I Robot and so, because no one can know. And what Mr. Roberto underlined is absolutely, I agree with him. What we've done, when Estonia cyber attack happened, Larry Clinton, which is the president of the Internet Security Alliance that I'm proudly representing in Europe, he got there. And what they done, the first crisis entity that they created, behind the tools are humans. Even in the movie, even if you have all kinds of tools and all kinds of ethics, so behind this is a human person. So I think the people need to be educated and just to be aware and just constitute this kind of, crisis entities using the tools, like in the army, like in the movie, kind of movie director. And then I was baptized as cybersecurity patient, and that's why I'm just involved in this field. So you have every time somebody behind, and you have a team, and then you use the tool as a tool, and just put boundaries on that. What do you think about that?
So just to clarify, humans should control AI, not the other way around. Technology should be treated as tools, education and skills. I'm sure there's no one on the panel who disagrees with that point, but I think it's obviously an open-ended question. What do you think on those points?
So, it's difficult to disagree with the principle. Nevertheless, I would, for the sake of the discussion, try to disagree a little bit with it. In what sense? When I look at how, let's not take some extreme example, let's look how my family interacts with the machines. My mother will come to me with its iPad and it's going to go, my boy, can you please fix this? I'll function as IT support. When my sons come to me with their machine, the dialogue is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be something along the lines of, considering what job your father does, how did you think you could get away with this? Okay? So, the reason why I'm saying that is because I am all in favor of education, and clearly I have done an effort to educate my mother, and even more so an effort to educate my kids. But in the end, we cannot expect that education will be the solution to all the problems. We cannot out-educate anyone or educate them to the point that they would be to our satisfaction. We've been trying the education for about 40 years, and it hasn't delivered exactly the desired results. And also, we are in a framework which correctly does not expect that we will have cybersecurity policing everything we do, because that would mean that we would also be able to see everything one does, and we don't want that for data protection, privacy, and other reasons. And it's better like that, frankly. Technologically, it's possible, but it's not desirable, and it is good that it is not desirable. So, I go back to what I said, therefore, on my previous remarks about sociology, anthropology, psychology. The trick is not just going to be to educate the user. Surely, we will try to educate the user. But the trick may be to try a different approach to link computing in a way that is more human-friendly. Human-friendly the way humans understand interactions with humans. Intuitive. Because if we get to the point whereby we're not sure whether the person at the other end of the line that we're talking to, or we think we're talking to, is a human or a machine, I would expect of security technology to have reached equally a similar, or ideally it should get to a similar level, whereby our reaction to security prompts is much more intuitive as opposed to, okay, another prompt, click OK because I want to download the content. I hope that helps.
And when you raised, both of you, the Estonia example from 2007, so it was a situation of, I think it was the first one, it was only last week that Condi Rice said that for her it was the aha moment, yes. And it came early for Estonia, it came in 2007, where after some political disagreement over a war monument, which was moved from the center to a war cemetery, or military cemetery, a few kilometers away, you had riots and you had massive DDoS attacks in a country which is one of the most digitalized nations in the world, where everything is online. And, but which is a very small country with just a little bit over 1 million inhabitants, meaning that even if the cybersecurity authority is very well developed, it's also very small. And when you're faced with massive attacks, simple DDoS attacks on all of your systems, then what do you do? And what saved, and what is really the takeaway from there is that yes, you have to be always prepared, yes, you have to have the good cyber hygiene, the good systems in place, but what helps is the community. And you had immediately the best brains of the private sector, which came from Estonia, they came to the Public Cybersecurity Authority and said, please, here are the best brains, take what you want, sort this out, it's important for all of us. You had the allies, which were there. Obviously, it's a very tricky issue. No country wants to have other foreigners in their system, even if it's under attack, but you have the allies. And again, coming back to the geopolitical issue, what helped? When did the attack stop? Yes, you could mitigate them, you could make sure that cut off the country from the internet for a few hours, days, you can sort out these things, but the attacks continued. When did they stop? And Angela Merkel made the statement, we're here with Estonia, it's not allowed, can't have that. when the Congress, the US Congress made a statement, when the President made a statement. And that means that it gets political very easily. And when you asked about the geopolitical, this is what we have. We need to stay with our allies. That's the answer to it. Our strength is in our allies.
I agree for what we said, what has been said before also. I'm very much in favor of awareness, education, and so on. There is also another thing that usually humans, we need to train them, but at the same time we have the duty, or there is also in the communication the so-called duty of care to take care of the products, software, and so on. And but in terms of cybersecurity, let's say community, we should provide the right tools that are designed in such a way that the humans could be like somehow protected. Clearly, there should be some awareness. I'm recalling some theories like mechanism design. That is just a theory. You can design the system in a way such that human can take any possible strategy, but still you achieve the optimal goal. Let's say. So ideally, we should be able to design and to implement and develop and also monitor, by doing updates and so on, the system in such a way that we minimize the risk, clearly based on the intended use and who is going to use the system, the tools, and so on. So this should be also considered.
Questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just a question concerning my name is Martin Witter, I work for the European Space Agency. What is, in your view, the separation or the contribution of various partners? So the EU, you mentioned the member states and the union, but also industry and the private persons. If you look at the autonomous car, for instance, there's regulation, or there will be regulation of who is responsible for what, because otherwise nobody will sell you one. And we're finding out gradually how this works. In the cybersecurity domain, you mentioned subsidiarity. So can we understand how is our vision for the future? Who needs to protect whom? Whose contribution counts when I'm a banking customer and I'm lured into doing a transfer, and in the end I transfer to a criminal? How is this responsibility apportioned to the different contributors in the protective chain?
It's a very good question, and it's one of the main challenges, of course, that we're facing currently, is that, yes, we all try to do our best, but the examples you brought, why is the finance sector the most advanced when it comes to cybersecurity? Because there the loss is the most visible. That's very clear. And when we are speaking about the duty of care, it's the same thing. At what time? And this is ongoing work. We don't have all the answers yet. But when will it be up to every person to do their updates, or does it have to be already comprised in the service and so on? So I think with the development of all the next steps, when it comes to the automated cars, when it comes to the Internet of Things, the issue of the duty of care, the liability, these are the things which will be really at the core of the debate.
So it's difficult to disagree with what Vivian is saying. The thing that I would like actually to try to add is that once we go into that discussion, we will also see, perhaps we will see where the limits, if you like, of some of the EU policies have been. When I say the limits, I mean the practical limits. And in that sense, also the political courage linked to that. Let me give you an example. A scenario that says that a service provider has to carry all liability for all its users because the user doesn't understand security, doesn't understand technology. Sure, a service provider can do that. But in that scenario, the service provider will want to see everything that the user does to know what is permissible under the policy, what is not, and to be able to block it. We see immediately that there is a problem with data protection by merely making that statement. The trade-off will need to be decided at that point. You go into a discussion on e-privacy, for instance, and we've seen different versions of the text on Article 8 that says that before the endpoint gets updated, the user needs to be able to give his consent. If the update is a security update that is related to an endpoint, like for instance, the energy smart meter, do you want the end user to have to give consent to update a component of critical infrastructure? Would I trust my mother with that responsibility when she doesn't want to trust herself with her iPad that can't harm anyone unless, say, she hits someone with it? I'm giving these examples just to, not to point to proposal A or to proposal B, but just to say that when we will go down into that discussion, which is a good discussion to be had, to be honest, because there are a lot of urban myths out there, like, you know, IT or software industry is unregulated, which is completely, you know, smoke and screens as far as I'm concerned. So, the moment we get there, we will have to make some tough choices and look ourselves in the mirror in terms of what it is and how we want to apportion that responsibility. I stand by my original position that has been, I don't expect all users to be security professionals. I don't expect of users to know everything about cyber. But at the same time, I will tell you that experience has shown that there's something immoral about abandoning your own judgment. So there should be an expectation also that you have an understanding of what you're doing, pretty much the same way you're driving a car on the road, and you know, whereas it comes with airbags, seat belts, ABS, it still abides to the laws of physics. So if you crash it at 200 kilometers per hour, we all know what's going to happen.
So I think personal responsibility is a good note to end on. I have to honour my responsibility for us to end on time. We're coming up to 10:30 and I promised that we would end at 10:30 sharp, so we will. Thank you very much for coming. Please thank our panellists for me. Thank you. You can find more about the Centre for Data Innovation at datainnovations.org. This conversation will continue. So thank you very much for coming. Have a good day.